You're listening to Sasquatch Theory, where the unexplained becomes undeniable. In this episode, I'm joined by Bryan from Central Iowa, who's had a lifetime of mysterious and chilling encounters along the Raccoon River and Hanging Rock Park. It all began when his girlfriend came racing home one night terrified, claiming a massive Bigfoot creature had been chasing her vehicle. At first, Bryan didn't believe her until strange blue orbs of light began appearing around his property. What came next around changed everything. During a summer kayaking trip, Bryan and a dozen witnesses saw a towering 8-foot plus creature swaying behind a tree. Before it vanished into thin air like smoke, rocks rained down from the bluff, and even his daughter had a terrifying close encounter with a shadowy figure that seemed to dissolve right before her eyes. Join me as we uncover Bryan's eerie blend of Bigfoot and paranormal experiences, from mysterious lights and vanishing beings to strange activity in his riverside camps. This is one encounter story you won't forget. Have you ever had a Bigfoot encounter before, and would you like to share it with me here on Sasquatch Theory? If so, please get in touch with me sometime at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com. I want to mention that the membership channel is up and running, so if you want to join, feel free to do so. If you guys can, purchase some merchandise off my Spreadshop website. You can also make a PayPal donation if you would like to help support the channel. It keeps the channel running and it helps out with the Bigfoot research. I appreciate everyone for listening. With all that being said, let's dive straight into Bryan's Bigfoot encounters from the state of Iowa. All right, Bryan, welcome to Sasquatch Theory. How are you doing today?
Just perfect. Thank you.
Good. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, Bryan. If you would, tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and your Bigfoot encounters and experiences from the very beginning.
I'm Bryan from Central Iowa. I've had only one significant Bigfoot encounter on my own, but I've had a few other people that are very, very close to me that have had several encounters that, I don't know even what to say. Just I kind of laughed at him at first, and I just took it in as these people are telling stories out of school, and I didn't know what to think. But it all became very, very real to me in the year 2016. So I'll start my story in the year 2019. My girlfriend came home from work. She worked at a bar overnight. She and her friend worked in a small town in Central Iowa, running along the Raccoon River. And there's three tributaries of the Raccoon River. There's the North Fork, the Middle Fork, and the South Fork, and they all kind of bleed together close to Adel, and then they dump into the Des Moines River. She was on, I'm not going to say the name of the road right now, but she was on one fork of the road coming home, and she had a 280ZX at the point in time. And her and her friend were racing alongside what she claimed was a large bipedal creature that was twice as tall as her car. It was running through the ditch and chasing these two girls. They pulled into our driveway, and she didn't even wait for the garage door to open. She pulled the car screeched into the gravel on the driveway, and they got out of the car and they were both crying, and I could hear them because it was summer and the windows were open. So I went out to kind of meet them on the soft patio there, and I was like, what's going on with you two girls? And they were like, there was something running alongside of our car that they both couldn't explain. I laughed them off, Miguel, like they were telling tales out of school as well. Just I was like, okay, whatever. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. I thought these girls had been drinking or doing something stupid. Fast forward to 2016. I was outside. I work at a place that I get up early in the morning and go to work at 3 o'clock, 3:15. And I'm sitting on the front patio just trying to collect the day, and I like to wake up a little bit earlier than then I have to go to work. Just kind of wake up, and I saw two blue orbs floating along this garage, and also this is against the middle Raccoon River. The person whose garage it was, if you were to walk 200 yards down the hill behind them, there's the middle Raccoon River. But anyway, I watched these two glowing balls. They were about the size of ping pong balls. They were floating or fluttering, I guess I would say, against each other. And they would go around the garage and around the garage. And I sat there for probably 20 minutes and watched them. And I thought, this is the damnedest thing. Like, what is going on? Well, it was time for me to go to work. I just left that be. I wish I would have talked to the guy who owned the garage, because it was my catty corner neighbor. And he always claimed that this house was haunted. But also, with the Bigfoot activity in his backyard, I wish I would have talked to him about that, because where we saw our Bigfoot was, I don't know, 3 miles north of his place, maybe, where we saw this thing. And I'm going to get into the Bigfoot here in a second as well. So I saw these two blue orbs, and I just went to work, didn't think too much about it. Well, my friend and I, Mark, we had both bought brand new kayaks this year. It was 2016. Every year we tried to out buy each other on the newer, nicer kayaks. I was a kayak guide, still am actually, on the Raccoon River. Every time that we went down the river, we always were like, "Hey, those are nice kayaks. Those are nice kayaks." If we'd run into a stranger or whatnot, but it was very rare that we would, because this isn't a heavily traveled stretch of the river. So Mark and I had a group of 14 of us out there, me, myself, and 12 other people. We started at Lennon Mills, which is up in Panora, Iowa. There's a big dam there, and a lot of people have pontoon boats up there and things. So we put our boats in, put the other 12 people in. Some of them were novices, some of them brand new kayakers, never been out before. And there are some twists and turns on this river that get a little bit, I don't know if I want to say sketchy, but there's been some people that have drowned out there, and there's been canoes or kayaks that have been lost. So Mark and I paddled ahead, and we knew there was one very dangerous corner coming up, so we stopped for a few minutes, and we're waiting for the rest of our group of 12 to come up. And I want to say that this other group had a lot of loud music going on. They were laughing and cheering, and I don't know what they were doing back there. That it's a kayak on a river, so everybody was having fun. Me and Mark are always very quiet when we kayak. We pull up on this sandbar, or we were going to pull up on this sandbar, and there's this huge splash that the Raccoon River is probably 20 or 30 yards wide. I don't know. I'm going to say 60 feet. And then on one side of it's a sandbar. The other side is a steep bluff that I don't know. I'm afraid of heights. I wouldn't care to climb up this. I'll send Miguel pictures of this here in a few minutes. From somewhere up on top of this bluff comes a rock thrown down by Mark's kayak. And he looked at me and he said, "What the heck did you throw a rock at my boat for?" And I was like, "Mark, you have a brand new boat. There's no way. I'm not going to throw a rock at your new kayak." And as he's looking at me, another rock flies in front of his face and splashes next to my brand new kayak. And he goes, "What was that?" And he just happened to see the trajectory of where this rock was coming from. It was coming up on top of this bluff that I was just talking about, that it's so steep there nobody can climb it. And for somebody to get in there, they would have had to have either trekked in for a couple miles or paddled downriver and walked in the suit for a couple miles. It was in the middle of nowhere. Mark and I stood there, and as he was pointing up at the top of the ridge, we could both see this very large, I can't even explain this very large figure that was wider than the tree. There was a tree that it was hiding behind that's probably 3 foot wide, and it was traversing back and forth. We could see each shoulder blade coming in and out, and then a face peeking out on each side. The tree was probably 3 feet wide. This creature was probably 4.5 feet wide and probably 8 feet tall. Mark said it was 8 feet tall. I think it was closer to 10 feet tall, but that's just me. Nobody's climbed up there to find out how tall it really actually is. I've given a story before. I want to go camp on top of this bluff and find out what, if there's tree breaks, if there's twisted trees, if there's anything up there. I don't think anybody's been up on top of this hillside for years. But me and Mark stood there for probably 2.5 minutes and watched this thing sway back and forth. As our group of kayakers came down, had the radios playing, they were being loud and they were laughing and they were hoo and ah. And we got their attention finally as they were coming down to, "Hey, slow down." They thought that they were going to get washed into the rapids, and they pulled over, and 12 other people stood there and watched what me and Mark were watching. It was this creature swaying back and forth. It had his left hand on this side of the tree, gripped onto the bark. Like, I can't even explain to you, gripped onto the bark. And it was just leaning back and forth and back and forth. Nobody spoke for, I want to say it went on for another 2 minutes. And all of a sudden, this thing just turned to the side. I guess it would turn to the side. I don't really know, but it vanished like a poof of smoke. It vanished. There was all kinds of dead limbs, dead tree fall, a whole bunch of things on this hillside. And as the hillside was, it was a straight up bluff, and then from there the hill went up. So there was trees behind it, and like I said, it was June or July, so there was a lot of leaves on the trees and things. But we went back that fall and took a couple more pictures of this bluff, and it's almost straight up and down. And if something would have left behind that tree that was as wide as it was, I'm sure we would have heard something. I don't know what to say about what we saw that day. So I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes passed after this thing had disappeared, and we all kind of just got in our boats, and we were, I don't know if the word's mesmerized but everybody was pretty silent. And we went down the river together, and everybody like kind of talked about, "Hey, what was that? What just happened? What was that? And to this day, there was 14 of us that saw it, and I can only get Mark to talk about it. Everybody else is like has like Sam Squanch amnesia, or I don't know what happened, but nobody else wants to go back in the woods. Nobody's kayaked. We used to have a huge group of people. We'd take 95 people sometimes to go down this river. Nobody has been able to, that was in that group that day, nobody has been able to rent another kayak from me or whatever. They were scared to death, or something really happened to them mentally that I can't understand. But I went back there yesterday, as a matter of fact. I paddled my boat up the river because we've got kind of low waters. I took a few pictures, and I'll send these to you, Miguel, of the location where this is. And I want to go up there, and I want to camp on top of this. And I was talking to a buddy of mine after he listened to my story on another podcast, and he goes, I'll go up there with you, because Mark's the only other one that will ever go up there with me. And I want to take 4 or 5 guys if we go back again. This thing was absolutely huge. So if we go back there, the good thing is the crops are out of the fields right now. When we saw this creature, the crops were in the fields, and there's no way a farmer's going to let you drive your truck through the fields. We can get back there right now. I really, really hope I can get 2 or 3, maybe 5 guys to go back there and just spend the night, spend a couple nights, and see what we saw, or at least I don't know if there's a migration pattern to where they stop here on the middle Raccoon River, going between. Like I said, I know there's been sightings in Panora, which is north of here, and Adele, which is south of here. And I don't know where they go from there. But the BFRO, I'm kind of skeptical about all of their information. I just want some more information, because I never even thought about Sasquatch before me and these other 12 people thought about it. And when we get off the phone, I'll give you some names of some people. And I don't want to put them, but you're not even going to believe it, Miguel. You're just going to go, what the heck, dude? I really, really was. I'm going to say this again, and I said it before. I was, I wasn't a believer in Sasquatch. I didn't even know that Sasquatch was a real thing, and now I'm a knower. I know they exist, and I've talked to a few people. My friend owns a campground just north of where we had our experience, and his dad has owned this campground since the 1950s. And he always talked about the boogers. And I just thought he was trying to scare us away from camping there, because I don't know, maybe it was his thing. Like, I don't know. He was an old man, but he always swore up and down that the boogers came up and down this river. And while we were camping there, I never really had any experiences. But my friend owns this campground still to this day, and he's never had any experiences, which blows my mind, because where it happened was only 3 miles away. And the old man, he swore up and down that these creatures came and visited him and his buddies. And I just blew it off. Like, I can't even understand. I just blew it off. I didn't really care what he said. I was like, okay, whatever. He's just trying to scare us out of his campground, or, it's like a dad telling you scary stories over a campfire at night. I really was blown away by Red's stories. He And if anybody's in the Panora area and you've had anything happen, please let Miguel know, because I want to hear more. And from what I've seen on the BFRO site, I see there's a few hits on this, and I have another friend that's around here that does Bigfoot research, and I've tried to get him to come up here, and he's like, nah, I don't understand why you want to go up there. Well, he needs to come up here because it's very, very rich. You just have to be at the right time of year. I promise you. We saw something and nobody else wants to talk about it. There's 14 people that are going, we saw something, but I can't tell you what I saw. It's like if you saw a UFO and everybody's just mesmerized by it to where we don't care to talk about it. We're too scared to talk about it, or I'm not sure. And I've got a few other experiences, Miguel, that not quite on this river, but I was trying to talk about my Middle Raccoon River experiences here, because this place is magical. And we have all kinds of Indian lore here, where you can go out in the cornfield after the farmer plows. You can find all kinds of Indian arrowheads and axe heads and that are all over here. I don't want people to come over and raid this place, but my daughter owns about 170 acres on the Middle Raccoon River, and we find things every year that are just absolutely amazing. And we're trying to fill up our library with more of these Indian arrowheads. A few years ago, we found up on one of the bluffs some carvings that were absolutely amazing. There's a picture of a curvy line and a sun, and then I don't know if it was the moon or what it was. And since then, the bluff has fallen off and it's crashed into the river. But these were old Indian. We have pictures of it on my friend Wes's phone. I have to talk to Wes. But I want to get my daughter out here as well, because she was one of the ones that witnessed all of this day on whatever it was, June in 2016. She was one of the ones that was there, scared the crap out of her. And she was about 12 years old, 13 years old then. It was one of her first experiences down that Raccoon River. Scared her to death. I can't tell you what it was. I know it was at least 8 feet tall. It was way wider than a 3-foot tree, and it just vanished. Literally vanished.
Yeah, that's incredible. What did she say she saw? It was a Sasquatch creature. What did it look like?
Completely. Well, okay, well, here's the deal. We pulled over on the east side of the bank, and the creature was on the west side of the bank, so the sun was behind it. We had just a few hours left to get down to Redfield on the river, so the sun was behind this creature. um she she, she was terrified. I don't know if she's kayaked since. She might have went out with her mom. I think if they do anything, they just go on lakes and ponds now, because Brianna's got a nice kayak, or whatever. That doesn't matter. But it was completely black except for when the sun glistened on it. It was almost like a sharp red color, like almost orangutan color. Um, it was just like the color of the tree. If it wouldn't have thrown rocks at us, Miguel, we would have never ever seen it. We would have never seen it. And the way that it threw rocks, So like I said on this other podcast, a major league pitcher couldn't have thrown rocks this size from that distance and gotten so close without either hitting us or missing by it so far away. When it threw the first one, Mark got completely splashed, and he looked at me and said, "What the heck, Brian?" I go, "I didn't do that. Like, I have no business throwing rocks at Mark's brand new kayak. That's stupid." And then when the second one almost hit me and it flew past Mark's face, he looked up on that bluff and he goes, "Look at that." I would have never seen this thing had it not been for it throwing rocks. It could have stayed up there silent all day and we would have never known. When the rest of the group came down, it had already revealed itself, and it was just every 2 to 3 seconds it would lean out one way or the other. But even when it leaned out, you could see its other shoulder because it was wider than the tree. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It sounds like the creature threw rocks at you to get your attention, and it revealed itself to kind of scare you guys off. Why do you think the creature revealed itself to you?
I think, being that it was June, I think it had young in the area, to be really honest.
Yeah, that's an excellent theory, and it very well could possibly be. These creatures travel in clans and units, and if you see one, usually there's another one around, and they can't be too far off. But yeah, maybe it had little ones in there. That's a very good point.
That's the best guess I can come up with. Otherwise, Miguel, we're not supposed to have mountain lions in this area. We saw all kinds of mountain lion tracks. We've been out on this river every day almost for months and months ahead. We get off work and we go out and we'd either put it at the dam and float up to where we were or float up farther. But we always saw mountain lion tracks in the DNR saying there's no mountain lions here. There's no mountain lions here. Well, I'll be darned if there is some mountain lions here. Um, I don't know if a Sasquatch has a bigger predator than the mountain lion. I don't know what else would attack anybody but a human. You know what I'm saying. We don't have bears here. We don't have. I don't understand why this thing would have made itself known, except for if it had young. Yeah, that's all I could say, Miguel. Is I think it was telling us to get the heck out of here. Like, it didn't know there was 12 of us behind. And again, Brandon was on his kayak in the back and he had a bunch of music on and they were being loud. And me and Mark pulled up there pretty silent at first, to the first sandbar. And I think it was telling us to get your friends and get out of here.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like something was going on in that area, and they didn't want you guys around.
Um, Now like I said, my friend owned the campground 3 miles, 4 miles north of there. I can't tell exactly where we were, but I'll have to get on the maps again. But this old man always talked about the boogers. He's got several little tiny cabins that are like dug into the side of hills. Like they're like old moonshine shacks. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
little things that you're trying not to see and make anybody see. But he's got a bunch of these on his property, and he always talked about these that this creature would come up there and either tap on windows or da, da, da. I thought he was just trying to scare us when I was 21 years old, and then I was 35 and we saw this thing. I totally wish Red was still here because I would love to sit down at a picnic table and talk to Red about what he actually meant about these boogers or what's happening here in central Iowa, because there's something to it. And there's too many people that saw it with me to go. Um, and as you and I were talking last week, I think it was last week, I said, I want my daughter to jump on this podcast too, because I'd love for her to jump in on this experience, because she'll tell you the same thing and she'll go, Well, I don't exactly know what I saw, Miguel, but it scared the crap out of me. And it wasn't a human.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that, and it would be really cool to get your daughter's account and to get her take on what happened. Iowa definitely has a food source. There's a lot of waterways and a ton of deer, turkey, and other wildlife species. So it makes sense why these creatures would be there. And yeah, I believe you. These things are elusive, but every now and then people run into them. It really caught my attention when you said the encounter took place around June or July. June and July in 2019 is when I encountered the Sasquatch here in Missouri. And I feel like it was because it was during the summertime and because they had little ones around. During the summer, everything's really thick. Not a lot of people are going into the woods because of ticks, mosquitoes, poison ivy, spiders, you name it. It's nasty in there.
So, have you got any accounts from the Wapsipinicon River in Iowa?
I haven't. Honestly, I haven't gotten too many reports from Iowa. I think like two or three since I started the channel. And I wonder why. I mean, Iowa just seems like the perfect place. Some people really pull out some monster deer out of there. And I just feel like they're in there for sure. And after hearing your encounter, I know without a doubt that these things are roaming the forest of Iowa.
It blows my mind. I want to get into the Wapsi if that's okay with you for just a second.
Yeah, let's do it.
We've got several hundred acres of land. My family does over on the Wapsipinicon. My grandpa's been a farmer over there for 50 years, and his father was a farmer over there for 50 years. We've got a place called Frogville. I know it sounds silly, but I lived over there for a little bit. I don't know, like in 2018, 2019, and I was talking to some old Amish folk because we've got a lot of Amish over there, and they've spoken about a hairy creature that lives around Frogville. My grandpa never spoke about it, but I'm really curious. So I'm gonna go take my RV over there next spring and sit down and spend a week or two there. As much time as I can. It might be longer than that. It's hard to say with work. But I was curious if you'd heard anything about the Wapsipinicon yet, because these these Amish folks I was over there, they built me cabinets for my house last year, and they swear up and down by this creature that they've seen, and I'm like, okay, whatever. Uh, I can't discredit them because I've seen something. Like I said, I'm not I've seen it with my own eyes.
Yeah, I personally haven't heard any reports there, but the Amish people, they're really tight lipped about anything that goes on in their community, especially with the Sasquatch beings. And from what I've heard, they're terrified to talk about it. And I think it has something to do with their beliefs. But yeah, I mean, usually if it's a secluded area, there's not going to be too many eyeballs there to see these things. And when people do, they don't want to talk about it because they don't want outsiders coming in and they don't want people to think they're crazy.
Nope, and that's exactly what I think as well. And Backbone State Park runs through there. It comes through Decorah first, which you're familiar with Decorah, Iowa.
Mhm.
I hope.
Yeah, I've heard of
No,
it.
you're probably not, being from Missouri. But Decorah, Iowa feels like you're in on the top of Colorado. It doesn't feel like you're in Iowa at all. There's been a few accounts there, and then it runs down into the effigy mounds. Are you familiar with those?
No, I haven't heard of it.
It's Native American burial grounds right on the Mississippi River, and then it dumps into Prairie du Chien, which is an absolute beautiful place in Iowa, to where you're up on a bluff and it's just grasslands as far as you can see. It looks like you're on the greatest map of Red Dead Redemption 2. Just absolutely beautiful as far as you can see to the east. These are old Native American grounds. And then the Wapsipinicon River runs down there into a place called Backbone, where there's several bluffs and things like that. If you take a few minutes tonight, Miguel, get on Google and will you please Google Backbone State Park. You'll see where there's been a few Bigfoot encounters at Backbone, and like I said, I don't know what the right answer is, because my grandpa, like I said, he farmed out there for all his years, but there's been even on BFRO, there's a few spots out there to where people have seen something. And I never imagined Bigfoot was in Iowa. I never even imagined there was a Bigfoot, to be really honest. And then I saw one with my own two eyes. Especially here in Iowa, I was always like, if it exists, it's always in Washington State or Oregon or somewhere. It blew my mind. So I've been talking to my grandma about this. She's still alive and kicking. And I said, what do you think about Bigfoot? And she goes, well, Grandpa always talked about it, but he never saw one, but he heard, his old friends would sit around at the coffee shop up there by Prairie du Chien, and they'd talk about this creature that they saw. And I'm saying, this just blows my mind that, in the 1950s, people were seeing this thing and they just blew it off like it's just some kind of ape or something. I can't understand. And what do you think this is, honestly, Miguel?
I feel like personally these are something from the time of the Bible, from before the flood. I feel like it has something to do with the Nephilim. If it's not the Nephilim, it's something that they created, and they altered different wildlife species, humans, and created their own. They created us in their own image, pretty much. It would have to be the only answer, especially for the supernatural side to it. I know a lot of people don't believe in that, but I have seen Sasquatch creatures that have just vanished into thin air, just poof, gone. And I've witnessed the orbs myself. And yeah, I've experienced.
That's what I'm saying. Ours poof vanished. Mm-hmm. Poof vanished.
Yeah, I always describe it like somebody threw sand or dust up into the air and the wind took it, just poof, gone.
Now, I agree with you 100% on there's more to it than flesh and blood, but I hate to say this, but I honestly believe they're almost flesh and blood too, and I don't know how that works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they definitely are flesh and blood. They're physical beings, but I don't understand the supernatural side, that the capabilities that they have. That doesn't make sense to me. But when I read about the giants in the Bible, it said that they're physical beings, but they had supernatural abilities. And then when you hear the Native Americans talk about it, they say they're flesh and blood creatures, but they're also supernatural. So that's the same thing we're saying today.
And I agree with you 100%. I don't know if we'll ever understand it in our lifetime. But I'm a Christian. I believe, everything that Genesis and Revelation has taught us. I also believe that there's far more out there than we will ever understand. And whether Bigfoot's part of it, that blows my mind. The fact that, I physically saw one with my own two eyes. Secondly, the portal, the orbs, the portals. I've got more stories. If you get more time, I've been waiting to talk to you for a long time. This is my favorite podcast, by the way. But
I appreciate it. Do you want to share it here on the podcast?
Yeah, I just don't know how far you like to go, because I don't know. This is a Bigfoot podcast.
We'll go as far as you want to take it. Let's hear it.
Ghosts, stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm open to that. Let's hear your experiences.
Okay, well, I grew up just outside of Baltimore, Maryland. Well, actually, in Baltimore, Maryland, we lived pretty much right on the line of whatever, the north and south. My friend Mike McCarthy, I should have probably said his name, but his parents had a house that was made out of stone, and in Mike's basement was like this hidden cellar thing that went down, and we'd go down there as kids and we'd do stupid things like smoke cigarettes and blah blah blah. But on the walls were, like, etched in stone, were words like repent and Bibles that were burnt and weird things. So we were spending the night at Mike's. I don't even know how to talk about this. We were spending the night at Mike's house one night. I think I was like 13 years old, maybe. And that hatch of the door, which was covered in carpet, blew open, like literally blew open. And there was such a screeching howl, like something I couldn't even imagine Bigfoot could have made this noise, to where even Mike's parents jumped up out of bed. They lived in this house for 20 years. And I don't know if it was because we'd opened that hatch that day and been down there smoking cigarettes and doing dumb teenager things. But there was such a howl that I don't know how the neighbors didn't hear it. It was the loudest damn thing I've ever. It was like a storm siren going off. And then as fast as it started, it probably lasted 20 seconds, it stopped and the hatch closed. So Mike's dad went down there the next morning after, he was like, what the heck was that? And he opened the hatch and it was completely burnt on the inside. Like, all the stones were completely black, like a huge fire had happened. Fast forward to, I'm just going to go on here to 2016. We were in our freshman year of college, and I had a kid named Hezekiah Dodema, who was from a small town here in Iowa, and he always talked about how he talked to this lady named Mary. She was apparently a witch or an evil spirit, and we kind of goofed around about it. When Mary, we drink beers as 18-year-olds and laugh. And one day, one of my friends, Ben, brought home a Ouija board. And Hedgie goes, I can't believe you guys did that. He goes, I'm not playing with that. I'm not playing with that. Well, we talked Ben into getting the Ouija board out, and Hezekiah came in. There was 5 of us. There was me, Ben, Pookie. Oh, I can't remember the other 2 kids' names. And Hezekiah was the last one. But Hezzy was like, I can't believe you guys are gonna do this. We put the little crescent on the board. We all put our fingers on it, and Hezzy's like, this is the stupidest idea ever. And I have a poem in my poem book about this to this day. Scariest. This was scarier than the time I saw Sasquatch. But anyway, Hezzy goes, this is the worst idea you've ever had, because Mary's coming. Mary's coming. Mary's coming. And I'll be damned if the room, it was the middle of the day, didn't go pitch black, and it sounded like a tornado was coming down the hallway. We were living in a college dorm, so there was all kinds of doorways in the hallway, and it sounded like all of them were blowing open and closed, and it sounded like every piece of glass in that room was breaking, and everything, you could almost feel it on your face breaking. And Hedgie goes, stop, stop, stop. And we all took our fingers off of the reticule or whatever it's called on this gosh darn Ouija board. We walked up and down that hallway. There was not one thing out of place. But literally for 20 seconds, the whole place felt like it shattered. Absolutely just shattered our whole apartment dorm. And Hezzy looked at me and he goes, I told you so. And so I wrote a poem about Mary came to me. I don't have it with me, but it's one of these things that I wish I could find this kid right now and find it, because I almost don't even think he's real. Like, I lived with him for almost a year, and then he just disappeared, because you go on from college. But I still live in the same area, and I'm like, you know any Dodimas from around Stewart, Iowa? I was like, no, I don't know any Dodimas. Where did you come from? What happened that day? I never paid one. I was like one of the cool kids in college, and Hezzy was a nerd, so I didn't pay attention to him. I was a jerk. He taught me a lesson that day that I changed my life. I absolutely changed my life to go on. Man, there's more going on to this than me just being an asshole to everybody. Um, and wasn't longer than that I became a Christian and went, my, my life is more than what I think it is. And I have more stories. I just have to think back, because I don't know. I'm 47 years old now. A lot has happened to me. These are just the couple that stood out. There's been lights in the sky. How many times can you talk about lights in the sky and people are going like, how do you explain it? There was a light that was here, and got closer and closer and closer, and then it just went, poof, and you got people that experience it with you, but how do you tell people about that on a radio show or on a podcast? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Terrible things can happen when you play with a Ouija board. And it makes me wonder if people open up a portal that follows them their entire life. Obviously, it's not something that happens every day, but throughout their life, a series of events unfold.
Again, if I don't know how much research you can do, but if you can find a Hezekiah Dodema from Stewart, Iowa, find that guy, get him on your podcast, and ask him about that day. And he's going to tell you about 100 other days, because he did not want to do this with us. He was terrified. And, we peer pressured him into it, going, hey, well, you're not allowed in the dorm anymore. And he was like, I want to be one of the cool kids. And after that, I didn't want to be one of the cool kids. I wanted to be just a regular guy going, boy, that blew my mind. Absolutely blew my mind. So if you could find a Hezekiah Dodema in your travels, you find that kid and get him on your podcast, man. You'd be my idol. I've looked for a couple years, and I don't even know, like I said, I don't even know if he existed. I never paid attention until that day. He lived with us for 6 months, and I never gave that kid 1 second of my time. I didn't care. But maybe that's,
Yeah.
my bad for just being a jerk roommate.
Yeah, I definitely believe you. The paranormal is definitely real and it'll blow your mind. And like you said, it scared me more than the Bigfoot encounters, experiencing the paranormal. I know as a Christian they say you're not supposed to fear the paranormal or demonic spirits or whatever it may be, but I don't know, it still causes me fear to this day. I try not to think about my experiences, and it's just hard to wrap your mind around.
And if I would have been a Christian that day, because I wasn't then, maybe I would have looked at this differently and, just been like, haha, in the name of Jesus Christ, you're going away. But there was 5 other people with me going, what the heck is happening? And I cannot contend with what's going on in their worlds. They weren't Christians. We were all just dumb college kids, I mean, we were playing Turok on N64. Like, everybody's mind is in another place. They weren't focused on Jesus. I wish I would have known Jesus at that point in time, because I think things would have been different. And I kind of want to say the same thing about my Bigfoot experience. I've been baptized and saved since that experience. And I've talked to my pastor about seeing Bigfoot, and he looked up Bigfoot, and he's like, well, this is apparently a real thing. And I was like, obviously, Bruce. I was like, I saw it. My friend saw it. My daughter saw it. It's not a demon. that was just after me. It's a demon in real life if it's a demon. Otherwise, it's a flesh and blood or paranormal experience, which I'm really thinking that all these paranormal experiences are starting to be spiritual. But what do I know? I think there's way more to it than we can even comprehend, Miguel. Everyone's like, oh, this is just the future, us coming back to us to change the future. That's why they're shutting down the nuclear power plants. And I'm saying, this is all nuts to me. I think it's demons, man. Otherwise, they'd be here to save us.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of theories out there, but still no one can pinpoint exactly what's going on. But yeah, I mean, I always say that there's more evidence in the Bible, folklore, and the Native American stories than what the government and science has given us. So I kind of stick to that.
Oh, when was the last time the government lied to you, Miguel? Come on.
I know, right? They've never done that before. So on that Sasquatch that you encountered on the river, could you make out any facial features? Could you tell what it looked like? Did it have a conical shaped head? Was it round?
It did not have a conical shaped head. That's all I can tell you. But the sun was behind it. We were on the east side of the river, and the sun was going down on the west. So its face was kind of blacked out to us. But what I could tell is it didn't have as much hair on its face as what was on its body. And its hair on its body was, I'm going to say, like 3 to 5 or 4 to 6 inches long. It was longer around its neck and off of its head than it was on its arms. So I'm going to say, between 3 and 5 inches long. And it was really dark, except for when the sun glistened on it. And there was leaves on the trees behind us. So the sun would, kind of sparkle through the trees. And then it would have a reddish tint to it, like an orangutan, almost like a...
Like an auburn color?
Yes, an auburn color, just sporadically as the sun shone up, but otherwise it was black.
Yeah. And do you remember the time of day? Like, was it in the morning, the middle of the day, evening?
Oh, this was afternoon. We'd been kayak. We did a 18 or 19-mile kayak trip that day, and I think we'd made it almost 10 miles. So it would have been, I'm going to guess, 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon because the sun was setting in the west, and we had about, I don't know, 7 or 8 hours to finish our last 10 miles. You can't guess on the river because sometimes you got a headwind. You can't tell how fast you're going. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you're going fast, sometimes you're not. It depends where the wind's coming from. But it was definitely the afternoon. It was getting towards mid-afternoon to late afternoon. I'm saying between 2 and 4 p.m. And I don't understand why it threw the rocks at us. Like I said, if it would have just sat up there quiet, we'd have never seen it.
Mm-hmm. How big were the rocks?
Softball size, maybe a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
And it came from 40 yards above us, 20 yards across. If I threw a rock like that, it would have landed 30 feet short of us. Like I said, a Major League Baseball pitcher could not have thrown a rock that far with that accuracy to where it landed within an inch of Mark's kayak. And the second one flew over Mark's kayak and landed within an inch of my kayak because it landed in between us. I was on the east side of Mark's kayak, if that makes any sense. He was more towards the middle of the river. I was closer to the sandbank, and he was talking to me about, why did you throw that rock at me? And then all of a sudden he watched it come flying across in front of his face, and it almost hit my boat. And I wish I would have stopped and picked up those rocks out of the river, but I don't know. That wasn't the thing in our mind. And there was 14 other people there with cameras and, iPhones, and nobody even thought that day to get their gosh darn cameras out. We just stood there and looked at it. Our our jaws were just amazed at we couldn't believe what we were staring at. It was the biggest damn thing I've ever seen in my whole life. It just thinking back to looking at the eyes of those other people on the sandbar, and they're looking at me, and we're going. It was like I guess I can't even explain it. None of us could explain it. We were just looking at each other, going, "What the heck?" And on the way down the river afterwards, everybody was almost silent. You know, you could hear a few people up in the front. Nobody really had their oars in the water. They were all just like, "What was that?" And then they'd just sit there dumbfounded, like they were in a trance. And to this point, me and Mark talk about it. I can get Brianna to talk about it once in a while, but she doesn't really like to talk about it. But everybody's just like, I don't know what you meant. I don't remember what you're talking about. We all watched it. One of the guys is a pastor at a church here in town, and he and his wife and his kids saw it, and they won't talk about it to this day. And I'm sitting there going, what happened? I can't understand what went wrong in their brains to where it's like amnesia, man.
Yeah, it must have really terrified them. And yeah, some people refuse to talk about it, and others, they want to learn as much as possible. But yeah, I mean, an encounter like that would be terrifying because you said that it was probably anywhere from 8 to 10 feet tall. And yeah, when you see something that huge, it'll really scramble your brain.
Oh, and it was at least 4.5 feet wide, Miguel. I mean, literally, it was behind a 3-foot tree. I'll send you a picture because I went back, like I said, just the other day and took a picture of this tree again. And the tree's at least 3 foot wide, and it's up on a hill. But the fact that it just, I don't know if it turned or what happened, but gone. And there's an incline behind the hill, so if it went up, even if it spider crawled up the hill, somebody would have saw it. Somebody would have heard it because there was enough of us on the sandbar that had a great enough vantage point to where somebody would have saw something, but it just vanished, man.
So when you say vanish, you're talking about like it just disappeared like a ghost?
Yeah, like that stupid 80s movie.
Like
I
the
can't think of what
Predator?
it's called. Yeah, it literally, like, it just turned into its background and either sat there or was gone. But it vanished. I've
Okay.
never even watched The Predator, to be honest, but that's kind of what it reminds me of.
Yeah.
How
So
how it went.
it pulled the cloaking ability out and just disappeared. Either it was still there or it vanished into another dimension, or like we're living in the Matrix and these creatures are input, like they're put into our world, into our reality, like something that shouldn't be there.
Yeah, and this all happened at a place I should tell you about the location. It's called Hanging Rock. It's Native American ritual place in Redfield where they used to the plains are on the west side, and the Native Americans used to run the buffalo over to Hanging Rock to where the buffalo would run off the side of this cliff and fall down into the river, and then there'd be um a group of people down below that would harvest the buffalo that fell down this cliff.
Mm.
So that's where this happened at. And if we go back, I don't know, when it's low tide, you can see where people have carved their names into this cliff from the late 1700s, 1800s, which is kind of neat. I don't know when this town got taken over, but Hanging Rock has this spiritual reputation for just being kind of a creepy place. Like my daughter's mom refuses to go to Hanging Rock. She's terrified of it. And this all started pretty much after the day in 2016 that I'm talking to you about. So I don't know. I'm trying to tell this story without too many details, but I'm kind of giving them away.
No, that's all right.
It's
That's important for the report. What river was this on?
the Middle Raccoon.
Middle Raccoon. Okay, because I looked up Hanging Rock and it looks like it's right next to the Mississippi Yellow River. I'm not sure if I'm looking at the right place.
No, you're in the wrong place, man. Go towards Redfield, Iowa. Redfield.
Okay. All right.
It's
Yeah,
just
I see what you're talking about.
okay. So we started up in Panora,
Hmm.
and then we were floating to Redfield. There's a dam in Redfield, and then we sometimes go past there. But this happened between Panora and Redfield by a little town called Linden, kind of.
Hmm.
Do you see that?
Yeah, I see that. And
And
it makes sense
hey,
why
can
they're
you?
there. There's a lot of forest around the river.
Oh, and a lot of farm ground, and it used to be a heck of a lot more forest than it is now. Um, I got asked if I could find a way to go camp or find a way in to hide a Bigfoot suit on the backside of that. And I was like, in June or July, if I went in on that farmer's field on the west side of the river, he'd have been pissed at me for driving across his crops. And then trek a mile through the freaking forest to go pull a hoax on somebody that you don't even know if they're going to be there. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And to stand there in July in a Bigfoot costume and not know if anybody's coming, that's ridiculous. That's what I always get asked. Somebody's playing a prank on you. And I'm like, no, there's no way anybody sat up there that was, I'm going to say 10 foot tall. Mark says 8 foot tall. But there's no way anybody sat up there and waited for us to come, because we stop on every sandbar. We stop sometimes, and sometimes we don't even make it down the river. We'll stop and we'll cook a whole chicken and just throw our tents up. We don't have any time frame on when we're going to get back to our cars. We'll take the whole weekend to camp sometimes. Just that's what we do. So it's silly to think that somebody was sitting there waiting for us. And again, they were like, well, how come you don't just go drive through that farmer's field to get back there and go camp? And I go, well, that farmer's gonna be pissed if I drive through his cornfield to put up a tent and go camp for the night or for the week. He's gonna be really upset with me. You know what I'm saying? I can't do that.
Yeah, absolutely. What all did the old timer tell you? What all has he experienced? What do you remember hearing?
He always talked about how he's got a couple, like 4 or 5 cabins out there. He's had a few windows broken, which the windows were like those old plate glass windows that are like 4 inches by 5 inches, and they have a pane of glass or a pane of I don't know how you describe it, wood in between the panes of glass. But he says something would either tap on the fireplace, like rocks clacking on the fireplace, because they all had little rock fireplaces that were made out of river stone, or it would come up and break the windows, or um come up and rattle your door handle in the middle of the night. Whether your door was locked or not, it would come up and jiggle the door handle. But nobody ever heard anything walking on the porch or walking around the property. People said their dogs would go nuts because people used to bring their dogs out there because it was a hunting place. But their dogs would go cower under the beds or um, hide under the kitchen table and just whimper. And they're like, these are big hunting dogs that'll chase down mountain lions. And they're like, we don't know what's wrong with them. And they're inside the house, haven't seen anything. They just got a sense that something scared the bejesus out of them, to where they'd be whimpering. And, the old guys would just sit there, and usually there was 2 or 3 guys out there at a time. So they'd all kind of have the same story about what happened at your cabin last night. What happened at your cabin? And they'd all kind of tell the same stories about, something broke the window on mine, and somebody knocked on the chimney on mine. Somebody spooked my dog to where my dog won't even come out this morning. My dog's still hiding. These are pheasant dogs that's what they live for. That's They get up in the morning to go pheasant hunt, and they don't want to get out from under the bed. They're terrified. But I really wish I could have sat down with Red some more and heard some more of his stories about what happened out there, because I think there was enough that happened out there to where there wasn't just 3 or 4 guys' experiences. Everybody who camped out there, not everybody, I guess, had an experience, but I think enough people that camped out there would say, I'm never going back there again, because every year it was pretty much different clientele. And one old boy, I actually met him, which I knew Red too at the end of his life. But this other old boy, Doug, he always talked about the I can't remember what he drove. He drove when the brand new Dodges were pretty fancy, and I don't know, it was 2016. He had a nice Dodge pickup with like the chrome rims and stuff. But it would he'd come out in the morning and all the chrome would be ripped off of his pickup. And I'm like, "What? That's like some weird stuff." Like, and he'd be like, "Oh yeah, it was either bent back or ripped off of his truck. Not the rims, but like the chrome bumpers would be bent back. The mirrors would be the covers would be tore off." I'm saying, "That's so strange." And he's like, "I worked my whole life to afford this pickup." It's like, I came out to go hunting, and now I have a pickup that looks like I was on the east side of Des Moines, and it got ravaged by tin salesmen. But he always swore by it. He was like, I will never. So he always drove a '92 Honda Civic out there, even when he was coming out to have a bonfire or something later. He was like, I don't know what it was, but something stole all the tin off of his truck. Is that not the weirdest thing you've ever heard?
Yeah, that is extremely strange. And did you ever talk to, I'm not sure if that's your wife today, the girlfriend that encountered the Bigfoot that was chasing her vehicle? Did you ever share your experience with her?
Yes, we still talk to this day. And it's kind of funny because I laughed at her and her friend for years about, they'd bring up, remember that time we saw Bigfoot? And I would laugh at them and be like, you girls are idiots, blah, 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 blah. And like I said, she drove a little 280ZX at that point in time, little 5-speed, badass little fast car. And she was like, it's all we could do on the gravel road was go 45 without just losing it. And this creature was running next to him at 45 miles an hour in the ditch. She and I still talk to this day, but she was like, when I had my experience, she laughed at me and was like, I told you so. And it's all I could say to just shrug my shoulders and go, I should have believed him back then, because boy, I would have changed my tune and spent more time on the river, or at least in that area on the river. Roll up my window here. Spent more time on the river and tried to experience what they experienced that day, because that was almost 10 years since they had seen it until I saw it. And the way those girls were freaking out that night, I really thought something happened to them, but I didn't think it was a big hairy creature. I thought it was more of some crazy guy from the bar that was running beside their car, because they were cute little blonde girls. You know what I'm saying? But when they showed me the location, this is far enough outside of town that I ended in the middle of nowhere. And the way that highway goes, it runs parallel to the river, kind of. You still on the map?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, so you come out of the South Raccoon River. There's a little town called Menlo.
Mm-hmm.
So they were coming out of Menlo and heading towards the town of Stewart.
Okay.
You see that? If
Yeah.
you're going east. And then the railroad bridge crosses the highway.
Okay. So not too
So,
far away from where you had your encounter at.
no, and this is within a few miles. And in fact, Nations Bridge Campground is where another experience that when we talk again, I have another experience. And it's on the South Raccoon. I was trying to stick everything to the North Raccoon River today, but I had to start my story with Ashley's experience, and because I thought this was just the goofiest thing I'd ever heard was Sasquatch. Who thinks about Sasquatch?
So you had another
But
Bigfoot experience?
yeah, on the South Raccoon River.
Okay. You might as well share it, man. We're here right now, and I feel like it's important to document it all together rather than spread out.
All right, well, uh, me and Ashley, the same girl that had the Bigfoot experience next to the highway, we used to go up there and camp quite a bit. In fact, we camped there almost every weekend. We'd bring, I don't know, 10 or 12 friends, family up there. And I got cars invading me, sorry. We'd go up there and camp every weekend, and we'd always put our tent as close to the water as we possibly could. So we'd be on the west side of the river, but I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 feet off the water. We'd try to be as close to the boat ramp as we could because, we were kayakers, stuff like that. Well, Katie got up, or Ashley got up one night. Her friend was Katie, that was also in our tent. She got up one night and said that something was pressing on the inside of, or pressing on the outside of the tent and then almost rubbing her face. And it was one of those where I woke up at 2:00 in the morning. The bonfire's still kind of going. This isn't my girlfriend. I don't really have to listen to her stories, if that makes sense. I was just like, you're nuts. You're nuts. You're nuts. This is the same girl that was in the 280ZX that night. I was just like, all right, I don't know. Yet this is 8 years later or whatever. She later woke Ashley up and said that something was palming, like palming a grapefruit on the top of her head, and from the outside of the tent once again. And then I laid there for a little bit, and I was like, what the heck? And I could hear outside I had a big, it's like it's a Pelican cooler, but it's like the big heavy one that's probably 80 pounds by itself, and then you put a bunch of food and stuff in it. But I could hear it getting ruffled through, so I was thinking, well, Mark's in a tent next to us. It's probably him out there. So I unzipped the zipper, and all I saw, was the lid of the cooler was open, and there was a small glowing orb light that was probably the size of a pool ball, maybe. And it was just casually going away from the picnic table that the cooler was sitting on. And it literally vanished when it got maybe 20 yards away. And at this time, Katie was sitting there looking at me, and she's like, I told you there was something that grabbed me. And I go, well, what was that? She's like, I don't know what that was. But whatever it was had two hands that opened up the locks on our cooler. It wasn't like padlocked, but like just the conventional locks that come on a cooler.
The latch.
The latches, both latches had been opened, and the lid was open, and I could hear it getting stirred through. And we don't have bears in Iowa. We don't have anything that would do that in Iowa. So whatever this light was, it didn't take anything. It just stirred our cooler around enough to make enough racket to where I came out of the tent. She was peeking out, from the door of the tent. I don't know how Ashley slept through this, but she did. It was weird. Now, see, I don't call this a firsthand experience just because, like, I didn't see anything but a light dissipating away from the cooler. Whereas when I saw Bigfoot, that was with my own eyes. You know what I'm saying? Like, boom. When I saw those two orbs dancing around Jeff's garage, That was with my own eyes. I don't know what to say this was because it happened so fast, and I don't know, maybe it took 3 or 4 seconds until this pool ball of light just either vanished or was gone. I don't know what it was looking for or what it was storing around for. We didn't have any food missing or anything. And I don't know what a orb of light would have taken our food for. And then, um, it was a little bit later that summer, I guess. This one's silly, but this could have been anything. We'd heard kind of that same rustling sound in our cooler. The cooler was not opened, but our kayaks had got moved down to like the steep part of the embankment. We always took our boats to where the boat ramp is to put in, but somebody or something had moved our boats to where the nose was in the water and the top parts were sticking out. And I can't explain what that was. That could have been a prankster. I just don't know. So that one's silly. But it was at the same place, same campground, same campsite a year later. So I really think there's so much going on around here, and I want to hear other people's experiences. This is one of the reasons I reached out to you going, I know you're a Midwest guy. I have another friend that does this here in town, and he's got some stories from local people. But I started with you, Miguel. Like, this is where my whole thing started. I was like, I'm going to go on Sasquatch Theory and see what's going on. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I appreciate you for making the report. And I have no doubt that when locals in the area hear this encounter, people are going to chime in with their own experiences. And I feel like the Sasquatch in this area are tied into the river. That's where they're living at. That's where the activity's taking place at. And a lot of your experiences are tailored around that area. So
Well, like I
I
said,
feel like they're locals there.
it's steeped in Native American history. Like I said, you can go out here and you could dig a hole and you're going to find an arrowhead or, a stone axe. They're everywhere here. When the farmers plow their fields, you can just follow them, and there's so much history here. And I don't know what the Native Americans had going on with the Squatches, but there's something to it. I really believe there's something to it. And I'd love to, I'd love to meet some really local people that lived here for, their families lived here for 300 years. There is none left, unfortunately.
Yeah. I wonder if it's connected to the burial mounds. And I'm sure the Native Americans knew a lot more than what we do today, but unfortunately, they're not around in these areas anymore. A lot of them they've been pushed off to reservations, and they just have their oral history. And unfortunately, the stories are pretty much like our stories today. A lot of them think that they're flesh and blood creatures, and then another tribe will think that they're purely spiritual. Some think that they're our big brother in the forest. Other Native Americans say that they'll eat you and they're evil. So you get a lot of mixed reports and beliefs, just like people today, just like Americans
Oh,
that are experiencing activity.
I'm going to believe that they don't want to hurt us. They just don't want us to be around. Like I said, that physical encounter I had, it was trying to scare us away. Get out of here, I think is what it was trying to tell us. And it knew that group was coming up behind me that had their music playing, and they were laughing and they were talking. Me and Mark were very quiet in the front. We just were kayaking down the river, trying to make sure everybody else got through that eddy line safely. But I think that particular Sasquatch was telling us to just get your group and keep going. Keep going.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But
It still seemed like it was being territorial, though, since I didn't want you guys in the area.
100%. I 90% guarantee you it had a young in the area, and I hate to say it, but I have a 50% that there was a huge male somewhere behind us watching as well. that's the one you don't want to see.
Yeah. Well, it's a good thing you guys just kept rolling along, because if you would have went up there to check it out, who knows if you would have came back out alive.
Yeah, I just I can't explain any of it, Miguel. It's just I didn't believe any of it till I saw it with my own eyes. Even like I said, when we were over at Nations Bridge and our kayaks are moved, or Kitty's head was touched by something, and a little orb outside of the cooler. I was sitting there going, it's just I don't know if it was energy or if I was too tired to think about it, but I was just like, who cares? Like, I guess as long as I didn't steal my hash browns and my bratwurst for breakfast, I didn't care what happened. That sounds silly as can be, and they weren't messing with me, but it sounds silly. But until I saw one with my own eyes, man, it's like I tell everybody, I'm like, I'm not a believer anymore. I'm a knower. I know what I saw.
Yeah,
And that's
absolutely. And I've
honest to
heard the
God truth.
same reports from other people on the channel and on other channels as well. And I'm still trying to figure out how these physical creatures, physical beings have supernatural abilities. And it's going to be hard to study something that can just poof, disappear into thin air, turn into a ball of light. But I feel like with people sharing these experiences, we're one step closer to figuring out the truth.
Yeah, well, and we lost our guiding light and Dr. Meldrum this year, and he was he was the one that was really trying to lay the fingerprints on what happened, or the footprints, I guess you could say. But
Hmm.
without him, who's left?
Yeah,
You
I
and me.
know. Yeah.
Well, a few others.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I just really want to hear other people's experience. I don't care if it's from Central Iowa or where it's from somewhere in Central, Missouri, our neck of the woods, Miguel. I think that's what turned me on first is your story about your property, and I was just like, man, this guy's not lying. And this was shortly after I had my experience. I was fascinated by it, and you were driving that old Mustang at the point in time, and I was like, I kind of like Mustangs too, so I thought that was pretty cool. But and you were going down to the Keeling Fields, and I was like, that's somewhere I would love to go. And then I
Hmm.
started watching that guy's videos about his raccoons and all that stuff. And I was like, this is all fascinating, man.
Oh yeah,
So,
absolutely. And it's cool to hear people in the Midwest sharing the same experiences as far as seeing orbs, seeing Sasquatch creatures, and yeah, all the strange behavior that's associated with these beings. It blows my mind, and it definitely validates my experiences when I hear people's encounters just like yours. And yeah,
I just wish I would have called you years ago, man.
yeah,
Honestly.
well, I'm glad you did, and maybe we can get together someday. I think you're about 6 hours from my location, so that's not too bad, and I think it'd be cool to check out.
Yeah, I drive through Missouri every year, twice a year, going to my grandma's house. I'll be down there on my way to Thanksgiving this year, as a matter of fact.
Okay, yeah,
Going to Gassville, Arkansas.
okay, yeah, you'll be passing through my area.
Yes, sir. But we'll save that for another date. We'll save locations for another time when we chat.
Okay,
But no, I'd love to hang out with you sometime, and I don't know, especially when the weather's a little better. It's been pretty nasty at night.
yeah, it's gonna get nasty this Sunday. We're going from 70 degrees down to 20, so that's a major
Yep,
change right
as
there.
are we. As are we. But no, I know I'd love to come down and hang out sometime. Otherwise, you're always more than welcome to come up here. Like I said, I've got almost 200 acres on the Wapsipinicon River, and if you get a little time, research that too, because there's been some sightings between Backbone and Vinton, Iowa, which is kind of where our land is, and there ain't nothing around there, but well, I'd be the only one there because there ain't nobody around for 200 freaking. If I'm not there, nobody's there.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Well, keep in touch, and maybe we can get together in the future.
All right, sounds good, brother. I appreciate you.
All right, Brian, I appreciate you, and thank you so much for making the report on Sasquatch Theory.
Yeah, you betcha, brother. See ya.
Yep, see you later. Bye. That was Bryan from Iowa, a man whose experiences remind us that the line between the physical and the supernatural might be thinner than we think. From vanishing creatures on the river bluff to glowing orbs drifting through camp, his story challenges our understanding of what roams the forest of the Midwest. If you enjoyed this episode, stay tuned for more real encounters right here on Sasquatch Theory, where we continue exploring the truth behind the unknown. I just can't imagine what Bryan felt like when he was on the Raccoon River kayaking and he experienced the rock throwing and then witnessed this massive 8 to 10 foot creature hiding behind a tree, swaying back and forth, looking at him. I feel like Bryan has a really strong theory when he said it possibly had juveniles in the area, and I feel like that's why they become territorial, is because their family unit is around and they don't want you in the area. Although this creature could have smashed them like a bug, it decided not to. It really does make me wonder why they let certain people go and other people they will charge them, and they're just extremely territorial. They have been known to chase people out of the woods, jiggle the door handles, and people have claimed that hunters have been found mangled up in trees. David Politis told a story where a couple was hiking through a forest and a Sasquatch came out, ripped the girlfriend in half, and just walked back into the forest. So people claim that these are extremely peaceful, loving creatures, but that's not the case. I'm not seeing that with my experiences and many other people who have been on the podcast. If you want to think and believe that this is something from Harry and the Hendersons, then go do that, but you haven't had the experiences that many other people in North America have had. And yeah, I definitely feel like Bryan got lucky, and this creature could have easily come down the river and just smashed them to pieces, or it could have thrown a giant boulder and crushed them like a bug, but it didn't. I felt like it was just letting them know it was in the area, and if they came into the forest, maybe they possibly wouldn't have walked out alive. But yeah, that's my 2 cents today, and I hope you guys appreciate this podcast. If you can, let Bryan know down in the comments that you appreciate him for openly sharing these encounters with everyone openly here on Sasquatch Theory. And if you made it to the end, be sure to comment, "I believe in Bigfoot," and that'll let me know that you finished the entire podcast. I appreciate every single one of you guys for listening. Be sure to like, subscribe, donate to the PayPal, purchase some merchandise, join the membership, do whatever you can, and it keeps this channel going. Until the next one, you guys be safe out in the forest.